Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the GSD Show. And today we are going to be talking with Cristina Garza about how the PPP has made some changes to the rules so you know exactly how you can stay ahead of the game, too.
If you own a gym or you need a gym, this is your guy.
Hi, I'm Mike Arce, and I've spent most of my career in the fitness industry and helping those in it succeed. And after helping over 2,000 studios and 50 different franchises within the industry, I've learned a lot about what it takes to be successful. Here, I'll teach your studio how to advertise, how to sell, retain more members, increase profits, and become an overall better business owner in the space. And I share it all with you here. Welcome to the GSD Show. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Tina Garza.
Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling.
What's up? How you doing?
I love that that's the intro song.
All right. So I wanted to talk with you today because, and this is something we set up a few days back once we realized that there were some changes. The entire idea of what I've been wanting to do for fitness studios throughout this, all the time, but even more so during quarantine because they needed more answers now than ever, was helping them figure out how they can get through it all. And the Paycheck Protection Program, really just money in general, was one of the topics that was a hot topic for quite a while. And it kind of died out as a hot topic once things kind of just, people either got their money or they didn't. But now there's just some updates. And you are the person I go to, so I'm going to you. So, Tina, you're from AccountingProse.
Yes.
Everybody that doesn't know, Tina manages all of my books. Well, Tina's company manages all of my books, as well as the books from many fitness studios and many entrepreneurs that I know as well. So, Tina, what do we have to know? What's going on with the PPP that we need to know about?
Yeah, so there are, it's ever changing, and I feel like every other day or week we're seeing, new things pop up on the Department of Treasury's website. So what I'm saying today could be different tomorrow. So I highly encourage you all to go to the Department of Treasury. There's a big banner at the top of the screen that tells you here's where you go to find PPP information so that you can be informed. But the biggest thing that I think is going to affect small business owners is around owner-employee caps. So a lot of times, owners don't pay themselves on payroll, or they pay themselves very little on payroll, or maybe they just recently started a business and they didn't pay themselves last year. So the big thing that's affecting our clients is the Department of Treasury and the SBA. They don't want people to take advantage of the program in their eyes, even though it already has been taken advantage of, and not give yourself as an owner a bonus or a raise compared against what you paid yourself last year. So we're going to look at 8 weeks out of last year. So we're going to take all 2019 payroll for you as an owner on your W-2 if you paid yourself that way, or net income if you're a Schedule C filer. We're going to divide that by 52. That's 52 weeks in a year. We're going to multiply that by 8 so we can find your 8-week average of what you paid last year, and then we're going to look at what you paid yourself this year. And the cap still stays the same. It's $15,384 and some change. They've rounded up to $15,385. That's $100,000 a year, essentially over an 8-week period. And they're going to take the lesser of 2019, or 2019 is really going to be the baseline. So if you paid yourself $10,000 in an 8-week period in 2019, but you paid yourself $15,000, which is the cap essentially, you're going to only get the $10,000 forgiven. So you can still pay yourself, but you just can't. That can't be written off. And this is unfortunate that this just came out about a week ago. And people who have already been paying themselves on payroll are now finding that they have to either reverse payrolls or come to terms with the fact that they're not going to be able to have that forgiven and it'll eventually be turned into a loan. Okay. So that's a really big hit for people right now.
So let's now that you said it and you said a lot of numbers, and normally I stay with you well, but now I'm going to ask you some questions to really be able to visualize it. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's say I got $40,000 of PPP money. Let's say that. Okay. So that was what I initially got. Normally, what was the rule? It was June 30th. I had to spend it by June 30th, right?
Right. So you need to spend 25% or less on non-payroll costs and 75% or more on payroll costs. And the payroll costs include things like, salaries, tips, commissions, vacation pay, employee-sponsored benefit programs, et cetera. And so that hasn't changed. Needing to spend it on those two categories, and then needing to make sure that you spend it before your 56-day window is over, has not changed. So the day that you get the fund disbursement, and there's now an alternative period, which we can talk about in a second, you have 56 days from that point to spend it. You have up to June 30th to get your head counts back up if you had lower head counts or if you had lowered salaries. So all that stuff is still the same.
Okay. So 56. So if I got my money May 1st, I've got 56 days from that date to spend
Yes.
money in order for that money to be qualified for being forgiven, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and there's a few caveats to that. There's a new program that's being it's already passed the House. It's called the PPP Flexibility Act, and what they're saying now is they're looking for owners or for businesses to be able to spend that money not just over an 8-week period, but over a 24-week period. I assume that that's going to be shot down when it gets to the Senate. I'm hearing that it's probably going to go to 12 weeks. So this is not law yet. So please don't, go to your banker and say, I want 12 weeks until it's actually passed. The problem with that is all of my business owners have already spent their money. We were the very first people to get the PPP. We got it like the day it was released. And so it's kind of like too little too late for the SBA and the Department of Treasury to come back and say, now you have more time to spend it. Because now that they're reopening their doors, the money is gone and there's no, as far as I know, no more money. But for this conversation, for everything that's currently written into law, we have 8 weeks at this point to spend it.
8 weeks to spend it. Okay, and then you're saying that it may pass. We don't know yet. Do we know when we know for sure if it would extend to 12 or 24 or whatever?
Probably next week, because the way that everything goes is, goes to the House and it goes to the Senate, then it goes to the President to be signed into law. It's already passed the House. It's in the Senate right now being reviewed. I'm very sure that it's going to get knocked down to the 12 weeks, just based on what I'm seeing in articles online. But like I said, I don't know how helpful that's going to be for people at this point who have already been paying people who are furloughed, which is totally allowed. You should be paying people who are furloughed. The whole point of the program is to pay people. But, when you open your doors, are you going to have nothing left? I mean, that's totally possible.
Got it. I've got a question here from a PopFit Studio. She said, if we decided not to pursue to PPP because it wasn't a good fit under the old rules, is it too late to apply?
I don't know if it's too late to apply. I know that there's still some funding available, and I'm seeing advertisements from American Express as of like yesterday offering PPP funding. And I know a lot of big companies have been returning their PPP funds because another new rule is that if you have borrowed more than $2 million, you're automatically going to get audited, which I think is an excellent idea. I'm sure that nobody on this call is a Ruth's Chris or a Potbelly or any Shake Shack or anything like that. But yeah, there's still potential. So I would say keep trying for every single program under the sun until you're told, no 1,000 times.
Yeah. Now, earlier when we first started talking about the PPP on this call, you started throwing a lot of numbers at me. So
Sure.
repeat that again, and let's just break it down a little slower so I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, we're looking at employer owner compensation. So the way that you pay everybody else is essentially the same. They're still going to qualify for the same things. They did add a few more bonuses in there for people who, needed it in writing. If you had back pay, so people who are furloughed, they're coming back. If you have bonuses or hazard pay, that's going to be included. The cap is still $15,385. But the number that I was really mentioning is going to be around owner employee. So if you paid yourself, $40,000 last year, you can't pay yourself $100,000 this year. They're going to take, the average of an 8-week period for $40,000 versus $100,000. And the way that we get that 8-week period, and let's just do some simple math. So you take 40,000 and then you divide it by 52. That gives you, a weekly rate. And then you multiply it by 8, and that gives you your average pay over an 8-week period. And in this instance, it would be $6,153.84.
So that's how much money you would be able to apply during that 56-day period for your compensation.
For your compensation, because what they're trying to do is discourage people from giving themselves a raise or bonusing themselves because now they have, money in the bank. And a lot of times I've even heard, people calling me on the phone and asking this, like, can't I just fire everybody and give myself the money? And like, no, that's not the program.
Yeah.
So what they're really trying to do is make sure that you keep everybody's pay, really similar. Your head counts are up. You're not lowering pay, things like that. And you're also not saying, being, crazy and saying, okay, well, now I've got all this money. It's all coming to me. So they recently put that into place as of like last week.
Okay, awesome. You were saying you have up until June 30th to get your payroll right. Is that what you said?
Your head count up and your salary reductions need to be resolved. And the PPP Flexibility Act could potentially even include or make that a date that's further down the road. I think they're going to change it to December 30th, but as of today, it's June 30th, which means that you need your full-time equivalents to be, exactly as they were, so you don't have a percentage reduction on your forgiveness. And your salaries, if you've reduced people's wages, anybody who earns less than $100,000 a year, if you've reduced their wages more than 25%, then you need to get them back to where they were. So it just needs to get down, the max is 25%. So if you went 35%, you just need to add 10% back to their pay so that it's at the end of the day not going to reduce that from your forgiveness. Yeah. And there's different options, of how you look at this. For an example, we have two options for the forgiveness look back period. One's going to be February 15th to June 30th of last year. We're going to take the full-time equivalent for that period. Or we can look at January of this year and February of this year, and then we compare that to a covered period. And we're really just trying to find out how many full-time equivalents do I have in either of those periods compared to what I have now. And let's just, for easy numbers, let's say that you had 9 people in your covered period, and then 10 people in your previous period. So before you had 10% more people, and you don't change it, you don't fix anything about that. In that case, they're going to reduce your forgiveness by 10%. That's the quotient. That's the difference between the two. So what we're looking at when we're identifying, how can we do this right on the application for our clients is we're looking at hours. We're making sure they know ahead of time how many people you had on as a full-time equivalent in those periods so that they know, okay, I need to get my ducks in a row so that I don't have, a problem later on down the road when I'm trying to actually get the money forgiven, because I don't want to pay it back. No, my clients don't want to pay it back either.
And so if you have 10 people on your team and you let go of 2 because it couldn't even be because you couldn't afford them, even if it's just they're not a good culture fit, you to let them go, pandemic or no pandemic, right? You can still bring on 2 other people to take their spots. They don't have to be those 2 people.
Right. So the full-time equivalent is just an equivalent, and it's not Jane Doe to Jane Doe or John Smith to John Smith. It's equivalent to equivalent. So, and full-time equivalent means somebody who works 40 hours a week on average or more. So we're actually looking at the total hours that that person's worked and deciding someone's equivalency. And even if they're slightly lower, there's an alternative calculation that the SBA has provided where you can say all part-time people are 0.5. To me, that's less beneficial for my clients because some people might be slightly under full-time, but still would be considered part-time. And I want to bump that number up as high as possible. But there's some additional language that they put in the documentation for forgiveness that I think is important to note. So you can pay people if they're not working, they're not actually performing day-to-day duties. You can pay them, and it will help your full-time equivalent rate. This is going to be helpful for people who have employees at gyms or restaurants or anything that's closed that you didn't require somebody to be in there, but you still pay them. So that's really helpful for you guys. And then the other thing is if you fire somebody because they weren't doing their work, then you can hire somebody else. That's totally fine. But as long as it's for cause, you should be okay. And if you want to rehire somebody and bring them back, and you say like, hey, Jane Doe, we want to bring you back. The business is opening again, but they've moved away or they've taken another job or they don't feel safe coming to work. So they're refusing to work. That will not reduce your forgiveness at all, as long as you have everything documented.
Got it.
So you've got to make sure that you've got, an offer in writing. So this is not verbal stuff, an offer in writing. They have to reject the offer in writing because even if they never look at this, while you're getting your forgiveness, they can look back 6 years later and then go back and change your status or make you repay. So there is a guideline that actually says keep all the documentation for 6 years.
Got it. Perfect. Another question here is somebody asked, I'm not sure what they exactly mean here, but you might. Are they talking about extending the PPP loan from 2 years to 5 years?
That's also in the PPP Flexibility Act, which has not been approved. So I don't actually know if they're going to make that happen. So the banks actually lobbied to have a shorter time period. It used to be in the very first, start of the PPP loan, they were saying it was going to be 10 years and it was going to be a different rate. And then they went to 2 years and they went to 1 year and it was been back to 2 years. And so it's just been very back and forth. But the banks are the people who really pushed the SBA and the Department of Treasury to have a shorter term because for them, it wasn't advantageous to service these loans. It was going to cost them money, which I think is total BS, but those are my own judgments. So is it likely that they're going to have a more beneficial rate and they're going to have a longer term? Like, yeah, it could happen, but if banks were able to lobby successfully before, I don't see what's going to keep them from lobbying successfully now. So don't plan on these things being changed. Operate as though everything is the way it is now, because they could totally scrap it, when they're in the Senate tomorrow.
Got it. You did a good job working with us and a lot of the clients that I know you work with, because either we know them or we referred you to them or something like that. And you're right. Like, I think you said like 95% of your clients got their money in that first round.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
great.
It was like $10 million. It was a lot of money.
Yeah. You did a really, really good job of instructing us on how to make sure we spend that money with different bank accounts and all that. For those people that have the opportunity to work with you right now, because I know you weren't taking clients during that whole thing. Are you taking clients right now yet or not yet?
We're taking clients. We're not taking clients that we have had people who wanted to do like just the PPP application and that sort of thing, like consulting. For us, it's just we don't have enough time to help everybody under the sun do that. We have our client base and clients we're trying to bring on. So I'm continuing to add YouTube videos. I'm happy to give you guys ad hoc advice, but the clients that we are taking on are people who are doing, long-term bookkeeping or payroll engagements. And yeah, I'm happily working with people who want that type of engagement. I love talking to clients though, so it's my thing.
I love it. Okay, good. So how did you instruct us when it came to managing that money with bank accounts and making sure that you don't commingle and confuse the books and all that stuff?
Yeah. So there's not a requirement that you do this. So if you cannot do this, it's totally fine. But we asked our clients to have a checking account or a savings account that was available for the PPP funds. They were very clear in saying that the PPP funds needed to be used just for the purposes of the loan. So if you had put it into your normal operating account and potentially spent it on other things, it could muddy the waters and make you less likely to get forgiveness. So we just wanted a very clear audit trail. So we had everybody move the money into their PPP checking. We remapped Gusto accounts, the payroll software that we use, or we just had people do a transfer from, if it was a savings account into a checking account. And then we're just documenting everything along the way. So some requirements would be things like, payroll journals for when we actually run the payroll. We're keeping our reports. We're going to make sure that any quarterly filings that are done, we're going to make sure those are in the file. Rent agreements, anything that you're paying for out of the PPP funds. Do we have an agreement in place? Do we have documentation that you paid? And one other thing that I wanted to note, historically they have said you can only get mortgage interest and rent agreement payments out of the PPP. There's a few other bonuses that they threw in as well that I think are really helpful for gym owners. One of them is you can write off lease agreements for personal property. So this is going to be things like if you have treadmills, if you're like an Orange Theory and you get a bunch of treadmills and rowers and things like that, or maybe you have a bunch of weights that you have that you're leasing for the equipment. We lease all of our computers from a company called Rippling. So we're going to be writing off those leases. And then they're also allowing interest on notes for personal property as well. So if you, instead of leasing the equipment, did you go and buy the equipment? In that case, we're going to write off the interest, but we're not going to be writing off the principal. And we also can't prepay anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other bonuses, or is that the main one?
The other thing would be they actually put in the documentation, there's two other pieces that I think are really important. Let's say that let me actually look for this example. It was really helpful. One second. All right. So they did actually put in their forgiveness documentation this exact example. So pretend that you've got your covered period starts on June 1st and it ends on July 26th. That's 56 days. In July, during your covered period, you paid in June, you paid your May and June electricity. So you paid your May a little bit late, your June on time. Let's say that you paid your July electricity outside of the covered date on August 1st. So it's been incurred, but it hasn't been paid. You can actually include any of the electricity or other utilities from all the way up to the 26th of July. So we're going to take everything that's inside that period and include it in your forgiveness. And that's important because people are kind of figuring out how to pay bills and making sure that they stay afloat. So we're just kind of cautiously paying things. They did say that yes, you can do that. And then I think that's really great. And the other thing is around the alternative period. And they gave this example. So let's say that you get your funding on the 20th of April, so 4/20/2020. The way that you can get the covered period calculated is 4/20 plus 56 days. So the date of disbursement to the end of the covered period. But for people who have biweekly payroll, you might end up losing out if you start on that disbursement date. Because let's say that you get that disbursement date of 4/20, but you don't actually pay people for 2.5 weeks later. They actually said that you can choose to have your covered period start on the first day of your next pay cycle. So that's not actually the date that you get paid. In this example, they're saying, 4/20 is the date that you're dispersed. If you're looking at traditional biweekly payrolls, your pay period probably starts on the 26th of April. And so you don't actually get paid until the 9th, but you can push the dates forward in order to make it more beneficial to you. And your accountant can walk you through those things. We're looking at pay periods and making sure that it's right. But they did build in some flexibility to be more beneficial. You just need to make sure that you're looking at things before it's actually coming due.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I got a question for you here.
Yeah.
Over the last 2.5 months, a lot of fitness studios have switched over to virtual.
Yeah.
Many of them still are because their state's not open yet, and they're not. They still
I
have
love
to.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can you write off your house if a part of your house if all of your workouts are happening from your living room? Like
I
where
mean, you can certainly try. I would probably say no. These are going to be things that you have, commercial real estate, lease agreements for in place before 2/15/2020. You probably didn't start doing this until after the pandemic hit. And they do require that you have to have, utilities and rent and all these things, already in place by the 15th of February. So my gut says no. You might have a banker that, could potentially give you some leeway. So try for everything, but expect that that's probably going to be declined.
What about at the end of the year for taxes? If over the last 3 months you did spend more money on internet for better usage and you did use your house, are you able to at least write them off for tax purposes since they won't qualify for PPP?
So the way that your home office expense works is it's supposed to be something that you use for the business that no other people can access for other reasons. So it needs to be like a room with a door. Usually it needs to have like a separate entrance. You would take like a percentage of the overall square footage of that area. So let's say you have a 10 by 10 room. It would be that percentage based on the rest of your square footage in the whole house. And the home office expense is probably one of the most audited expenses. But I do think that you could attempt to do that. I mean, the IRS doesn't really have anybody auditing right now anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. Probably shouldn't say that too loud. But you can certainly try for it. The other thing, too, is there is another bill that's currently being looked at. It's not even in the Senate yet. I think it's still kind of an idea phase. It's called the Small Business Expense Protection Act of 2020. And this would clarify that the receipt of coronavirus assistance does not affect the tax treatment of ordinary business expenses. That's exactly how it's written. And the way it stands right now, since you're taking the benefit of getting money, for these salaries and utilities and things like that, it's essentially like a bonus. They are talking about reducing that from your net income at the end of the year, which essentially makes you get taxed higher, whatever that loan amount was. This is actually saying, hey, the coronavirus is happening from no fault of our own. We really had no other way of supporting our business. So let's just say that all necessary and ordinary business expenses are treated exactly as they normally are without any worry that it's going to, we're going to have a big tax bill at the end of the year. So again, that's not even in the Senate or the House yet, but that is something that they're thinking about because people are starting to really wonder, is this going to bite me in the butt later when it comes to end of year taxes?
Right, right. You see, all this is like, and I'm probably one of the more savvy people of agency owners that I know, and I don't know any of this stuff, and I can keep up. And so, for everyone watching, listening, before we kind of go on, just to make a point here, I've never felt so comfortable financially in an uncomfortable environment because of someone like Tina. like having,
Thank you.
and not just you, Tina, but Jim, and just having a really good financial team.
Yeah.
And it's always been told to me by mentors and coaches, like, make sure that you invest in the right people for your finance team and the people that manage your money and all that, because it'll cost you so much more to get someone at a discount. And I know people, family members that didn't get their PPP money, and they were.
Yep.
I was asking them what they were doing, and they were like, "Oh, I was replying to the emails that Bank of America sent me. I don't know. I emailed them, and it was like, well, because my girl was on the phone all night
I
calling."
was, yeah.
Yeah,
We were talking to our bank until like midnight, and I know you experienced this. I won't give any dollar amounts out, but they offered you a lower dollar amount on your loan, and I went back and I was like, no, I did the triple snap, like because ultimately, your expenses as you get more and more successful are naturally going to be higher. You're bringing people in, you're paying their wages. They were just trying to base yours on 2019, which was inaccurate. We were looking at the rolling calendar year, and so we got them to fix that for you. We even went back and had people who were declined, and we're like, this is not right, and we had them approved at exactly as we wanted. And I think I probably upset every single person at every bank under the sun, but ultimately I don't care. This is not about them. This is about our clients being able to survive and thrive. And it breaks my heart to see that people tried to get the PPP on their own, didn't have a partner to help them, and now are still, struggling to get it to make sense or to even get the money to come in. And some people were just flat out, they're just not going to get it.
right. Yeah, no, I mean, it was great watching your work, and you were texting us at like 10:30 at night, and so for everyone watching, listening, yeah, definitely. If you don't have Tina's info, one thing that's really good about Tina too, you work with a ton of fitness studios already, so you understand the space pretty well. We've had you on our podcast to go over like what the average revenue per square foot should be for like a studio, and the value per employee for a studio. But you understand what the metrics should be, which is good. We
Yeah.
should have you out for even more stuff now again. But yeah, I mean, it's been great to have you on. For anything else we need to know about the Paycheck Protection Program or EIDL or any updates? I mean, you shared a lot with us today, which is great.
Yeah, I'm going to thumb through my note. I have a big slideshow that I am working on right now.
Okay.
The idle one is important that they have reduced the overall loan amount. It used to be capped at a couple $1,000,000. It was either 2 or 10. I don't even remember anymore. Now they're capping it at $150,000. And I mean, we got the idle. We were expecting 6 months of operating costs. We did not get that. We got the 150. That was a bummer because I feel like it was advertised differently. And the PPP, I'm glad that people are returning money. I think that actually helps other business owners who have been like waiting in line to get this kind of money, and don't have, a giant company like Potbelly. Gives them a better chance. So, like I said before, yes, it sometimes seems dire when the numbers are climbing and there's reports that say there's no more money left. There's still a chance that there is. So just keep putting your applications in. Last time, when the funds ran out for the very first round, they just took whoever was currently in the queue to get money, and they just kept bumping them up the list as a second round came out. So just keep trying. Don't give up. I mean, I say that if it's a battle worth fighting, keep fighting.
Yeah, love it. Christina, what's the phone number people should call if they want to learn more about working with Accounting Pros?
Yeah, so our main line is 866-477-9708. On the weekdays, we also have our chat bot open. I'm normally the one who's manning the chat. It's a chat bot and also me. So if you have questions, you can always go there. You can also just send an email in, info@accountingpros.com. That'll come over to me. And I'm happy to give people advice. Like I said, we are looking to work with clients long term, but if you have just a quick question about what is the PPP, am I eligible, am I going to be totally in trouble if this happens, I'm happy to help you out. I've just been casually looking at documentation and giving advice. But Mike, you're right. Don't wait to hire an accountant. This is a time that your accountant's really going to be helpful when it's really high risk. Like, you need to get money in the door. You want to make sure you don't have to pay it back. You need also to be aware of other programs that are available, like other grants and loans and things like that. Your accountant should be the person who's really like getting that done for you so that you can think about bigger stuff, like actually getting the business going again. So it's an investment for sure, but it's an investment that pays dividends forever. You will not regret hiring a good accountant.
Got it. So the number I got here, it's 866-477-9708.
God, I hope so. Yeah. Or my direct line is 303 928-4126. So I answer that Monday through Friday, 8 to 6-ish. And sometimes we can talk after hours too, depending.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You dropped bombs today, so we can do this. Yeah,
Oh my God, nerd.
Everyone watching, everyone listening, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode.